Welcome to Black Men Speak. I'm your co-host, J.R. Stewart.
And I'm your other co-host, Tommy Duncan.
And today we're going to examine the whole Jussie Smollett situation and see if we can make sense of why he would do, well, allegedly, do what he's accused of doing, and see if we can make some sense of it, because most people look at it on the surface and say it does not make any sense. That for a person who has a rising star on television, somewhat of a music career, also I hear he's kind of popular, why would you risk your livelihood for this?
You know, it's unfortunate to see this happening with someone who, I guess, a lot could see as a rising star in media and in music or in entertainment in general. And, at the end of the day, something that we thought was one thing turned out to be another, and it looks like it was about money.
Well, I don't think it was about money. I know they've thrown that out there several times that he wanted a pay raise, but from what I hear, his agent never went to Fox or to, I can't think of the producer's name, to ask for more money. And so I don't think it was about money. Here's my theory.
Okay, we want to hear your theory.
So my theory is that there are some folks, some black folks, who suffer from what I call that they want their Selma moment, that they look back on the civil rights movement and see the marching across the bridge in Selma and how historical that is. They want their historical moment. They want to be known for something. So his mother was quite active in the Black Panther back in the 60s and 70s. And I'm pretty sure that when she's sitting around the table with her Black Panther radical friends from that era, and they're talking about the good old days and the things they did to stand up to the man and how they stared him down, how they did this, how they went up against dogs and the police in California. Jussie's sitting around that table, but he doesn't have a story to tell. He doesn't have a Selma moment to participate in the conversation. So, and because he couldn't have a legitimate one, when we know he's a very anti-Trump personality, he speaks out against Trump all the time, I don't think the president pays him any mind, even though he's accused the president of coming.
Well, he has tweeted a little bit on this issue. Of course, he tweets about everything.
Yes.
But, I mean, the question is this.
I don't know if he tweeted on Jussie, though. I don't think Jussie made the radar. But the bottom line is the president is not after him. Nobody's sending Secret Service after him. No one's going to gun him down or take him out or do anything to him. I mean, he's just insignificant on that. He's not that big of an opponent to cause anybody any harm. So because he couldn't get there through legitimate means, I think he fabricated all of this in order to raise his stature, to become a hero, become a victim. Victimhood is often preached by liberals, and it blew up in his face. He paid these two guys to beat him up, put a noose around him, pour bleach on him, and he filed a police report claiming that a couple of white guys with mega hats on did this. Now, it's 20 below. On this particular night he claimed he was attacked, it's 20 below. Who in the world in Chicago is walking around looking for somebody to beat up at 2 o'clock in the morning when it's 20 below?
Well, at the end of the day, weather details or whatever it is, I mean, I guess the question would be, what's the end game? And your suggestion is that it's stature towards what? I mean, ultimately, what are you suggesting is his end game?
Because, one, this would elevate him in the gay and lesbian community. It would also elevate him among white liberals, socialist, progressive Democrats. And then on top of that, it would give him a story to tell when Mama's sitting around the table telling her stories about the good old days when she was in the Black Panther movement, that he would actually have something to contribute now. Hey, I was attacked by these two, Trump supporters, and they tried to beat me up, but I was fighting back. I didn't go down, I just didn't take the beating. I was fighting back. But the whole story of it just didn't make any sense, because the police get there and you're still on the scene with the rope around your neck. Who in their right mind? Most people just take the rope off, throw it to the side there and say, hey, well, that's the rope they tried to put around my neck. You would just be sitting there with the rope around your neck looking silly.
Well, you have a good point. I mean, I can't really speak to all of the specific gory details of this incident. I think it's an unfortunate incident in terms of him wanting to raise his stature publicly, socially in the LGBTQ community. Possibly don't know that this is the best way to do it, even if obviously he did get a lot of attention when people thought it was someone else who
huge amount of attention.
Exactly, and so again, at the end of the day,
you can't buy press.
But look at this way. He already had a pretty big platform, being on one of the most popular shows in television today. So he does have a lot of exposure.
But he couldn't voice his political views on that platform. I mean, at his little concerts, sure, he can say what he wants on his Twitter feeds, in social circles. Of course, he can speak up, and he has a little bit of a voice. But he didn't have it like Kaepernick on Sunday, taking a knee. That's a pretty big stage to be. If they film you taking the knee. On Empire, he couldn't do anything there. He didn't control that set where he could use that as a way to protest against the president.
I would agree. I mean, obviously, a different platform than you would, in a sports game, even though, you have a limited amount of time if you're going to do that. For instance, you speak of Kaepernick, and he has a couple of minutes during the singing of the national anthem. You have, of course, Smollett. He has a completely different platform, but again, he has other avenues of doing this. I mean, there are a lot of folks who have millions and millions of people on their social media feed, whether that's Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, or whatever it is. And so there are a lot more vectors that you can use to get your message out there and to increase your level of exposure than, of course, a Dr. King or a Jesse Jackson at that point in time, or a Malcolm X, or anybody of historical significance. I mean, at this point, anybody can be a journalist.
True.
At this point, and I guess unfortunately, for Smollett, he used the wrong methods. He's lost a great deal of credibility, and unfortunately for some folks, once you lose that credibility, it's almost impossible to get it back. I really hate that for him. I hate that for his fans. I hate that, of course, especially for his family, because it doesn't just impact him personally. It impacts the people that are associated with him, those folks who are his colleagues on, of course, the show, his followers, his family, etc. And I guess the question, goes into the lessons learned, not just for him in particular, but other folks who are out there like him, who are rising stars. I mean, the good news ultimately is that life isn't over. Obviously, we're at the very beginning of what's going to come out in the trial, or what's going to happen to him personally. But there's a lot to be learned here, and the question is, for young folks out there, what do you take away from this?
So 2 things I want you to start thinking about, chewing on while I respond. 1, 24 detectives worked on his case, 24. And then the second thing is that there are legitimate issues in Chicago that need attention, that he took the wind from. He stole the oxygen from legitimate stories that need attention to cover him. So 1, for instance, if you're a homicide detective in Chicago, I have no earthly idea how they keep up with the caseload. The fact that they have a 7% conviction rate pretty much illuminates how severe the problem is. They just can't keep up with the cases and prosecute them. Find the people, bring them to trial, bring them to justice, and prosecute them. But when you have every day 4 and 5 new cases hitting your desk that you have to go and investigate, you can't possibly keep up with that many investigations. You go on vacation for a week and come back, and you got 30 more cases added to your caseload. So obviously the homicide detectives are just overwhelmed there. And to have 24 dedicated to just investigating his false claim is resources being taken away from legitimate cases that need to be investigated. Those people are being robbed of their justice and due justice because of his false claim. It wasn't just that he just made a false story, and if everyone had just blown it off and ignored it, okay, that would have been one thing. But when you take that many resources away from investigating real crimes to look into this, and they did a good job. I mean, they got to the bottom of it. I give them credit for that, but it came at a cost. And there are cases that will not be investigated, that someone's going to say, man, we can't. I went out to the scene and looked at this. There was just a dead body there. Close the case. I can't figure out who did this, and they'll just move on, not giving it any time because they've investigated and spent time on this one. The second thing is Chicago. I mean, every weekend there's 20 or 30 people being killed. 2 or 3 a day during the week, and then on the weekend they just go for double digits. There is a serious problem in that city. I wish he would have taken the time to use his star and his fame to bring attention to the serious problems in Chicago, as opposed to trying to create a fake story to elevate himself. He would have elevated himself to a higher plane by getting involved with the local issues there, by doing some protests, by doing some marches, by doing some walk to bring attention to the high murder rate and the fact that maybe we need to bring the National Guard in, maybe we need to do something else besides what we've been doing to bring this murder rate down.
I mean, I can't disagree with you on those two, very poignant areas. I mean, I think, first and foremost, obviously, the time and attention was put on this particular case because of the national visibility and the PR that they had to manage for this particular story. And so, those who were, in power had to do what they had to do in order to contain the PR image for the entire city, of Chicago. And so, I mean, when you look at a narrative of a city that's going to attack someone of a specific, demographic, someone who's a high-profile person, then unfortunately, they were put in a position where they were maybe forced to allocate a lot of resource, a lot of money, a lot of time and attention. I don't want to say unnecessarily because they had to get to the bottom of it, but ultimately they had to get an answer to it, and the news is the news. Now, on the other end, I would agree with you 100%. Chicago has some major problems culturally with crime. Every day you can probably read something in the news as far as Chicago. The violence, when you look at the job situation, when you look at the state of education, in particular relevant to us when you look at the black community and the state of the black community in Chicago. Chicago has a very unique brand of politics that is unparalleled in the nation, probably only close to maybe some places in Louisiana, one of your old stomping grounds. And so there are a lot of major problems there. But at the end of the day, what gets attention are those things that people in power feel should get attention.
But it's not the entire city.
Right, of course.
Because there are plenty of white people who live in Chicago who say, this is a great city.
Well, it is for some people. I mean, if you have money and prestige, it doesn't matter where you go. If you have money and prestige, you can be in the worst city in the world, but if you have money, you can buy comfort.
I mean, wherever the upper echelon areas of Chicago are, I never see them on TV complaining about, we had 20 or 30, 50 shootings and 30 people killed over the weekend. That never seems to happen in those
that comes along with money and privilege. Money and privilege.
I guess in police protection?
Well, of course, that comes along with money and privilege. Money and privilege will buy you police protection because you don't find this happening in other communities as it happens in ours. So, yeah, that is a situation that is a complicated.
So I saw a mother who, while all this was going on, whose son was killed walking to school. I mean, of course, it was a drive-by shooting, and there was.
This has been a year or so ago now.
No, this is just recently.
Oh, recently. Well, there's been a ton of them.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So there are probably a ton of mothers who could say have the same story, but so she was asking when it came out that they had devoted so much attention and resources to investigate Jussie's claim. She was like, "Well, where's the justice for my son? My son was killed walking to school."
Right. Unfortunately,
where are the 24 detectives devoted they gave my son to trying to find his murder?
You're right, but at the end of the day, it's not a national story when her son gets killed because unfortunately there are so many children who are losing their lives in Chicago every week. And, if this was, Jimmy, to think about this, if this was someplace maybe in Connecticut or New Hampshire, this would have been a big story.
This would have been a big story. They brought the National Guard in.
But because it's in Chicago, it's not a big story. That's a problem.
Yeah, if it was Connecticut, New Hampshire, Maine, some states where it's very predominantly white and somewhat affluent, no, this would have gotten settled. This would have been dealt with in a different way. They'd have a guard on every corner. To lock it down if that's the case, so kids can go to school and people could move around without the threat of being killed.
Now, as we begin to kind of wrap up some things, I guess one of the interesting storylines in Chicago particularly is the mayoral race. And so you have two women, both African American, who will, I believe, one or the other is going to be the mayor of Chicago.
I thought there was a young kid who was running also. Did he just not make the cut, or?
I believe that. I think this is a runoff.
Okay.
So it is a runoff. So you have two African American women, one of which, of course, will be the mayor of Chicago very soon. So it's been an interesting storyline. Maybe that's for another show, but it'll be a very interesting
narrative. We
narrative.
certainly look into that one, because maybe a woman would do a better job of running that city. Who knows?
You know, Rahm Emanuel, will now be, there you go. He will be singing Happy Trails, and we'll have a new mayor very soon.
So, well, the folks there, a lot of folks there are not happy with him, so I'm sure they'll be glad to see him go. And let's hope that, one of the two women, whoever gets elected, can turn things around there. Hopefully you'll ask for the help from the state and the federal government, whatever you need. Don't try to tackle this by yourself with just city resources. It may take a lot more than that.
Well, it was interesting because one of the things that President Trump said very early, that he would have solved this problem in no time in Chicago by singing in the federal troops, but I haven't seen anything.
He did make that offer. I believe the offer was rejected by the mayor.
Mm-hmm. But he doesn't particularly care, either way, if it's something that he wants, though, is it?
Well, I don't know about the not caring part. I think the concern overall would be that if you were to send in the federal marshals, send in the state, the National Guard, militarize the city, some folks will find that offensive, to bring that into just into the black community to kind of put it under control. The other thing is that if it worked, it would be a huge campaign PR for the president feathering his cap, that I don't think Rambo or the Democratic Party wants that to happen. Well, so if anybody turns it around, they want to turn it around on their watch, on their plan, on their resources, as opposed to Trump coming in with all of his federal bullies and taking over our city, locking it down, and then come campaigning time say, hey, see, I turned this around.
Well, that's of course for another show, but at the end of the day, when it comes to the protection and the defense of our communities, what has been happening has been working very well. So, sometimes you have to go to extreme measures to get extreme results under extreme circumstances.
And there are a few leaders there who have been calling for the federal government to step in. They need a lot more voices to make that happen, but I think if they bear enough pressure, they could maybe force the issue.
Gotcha.
So I think it's probably time for us to wrap up this episode. We wish, let's say one last thing. What's your prediction on the outcome? Jail time, or does he cop a plea and do some PSAs? And does he finally give up his claim that he was right and he's innocent? Or do you just go ahead and apologize, ask for forgiveness, and start establishing your reputation?
Jimmy, if I were a bet man, he's still male and black, so I think he's going to do some time.
Even if he apologizes and asks for forgiveness?
Well,
so I think right now, if he continues to be defiant and claim he's innocent, and this is true, he may do some time. But I think if he can get on his knees and go ahead and sort of apologize it now and just say, hey, I was deranged, I was out of my mind, I was a little crazy, I'm sorry. Because American people, especially black folks, are very forgiving.
Well, that's not the folks who are controlling the outcome.
Write them a check for the cost of the resources, and start doing some PSA stuff. Start becoming part of the solution, not be the problem. Call what was the quarterback's?
Which one? Who we talking
Michael
about?
Vick. Call his publicist and find out what you have to do to get back in the public's good grace.
But that was, of course, after he did time.
That was after he did time. That is true.
So that's my bet.
Time?
Yeah, time.
Oh, okay. I'm hoping that he comes to his senses, apologize, and decide to become part of the solution by doing some public service works, make some announcements, and that because of that he gets probation, since he's first time. This is his first time actually getting in any serious trouble. So
I think the only saving grace that he may have is the empower and the influence of the community that he is a representative for the, I mean, because let's be quite frank, the LGBTQ, very, very powerful community, a lot of money, a lot of influence, and so that may be his saving grace.
I thought you were talking about black people. But
no, the LGBTQ people, they have a lot of money, power, and influence, and so that's possibly his saving grace. Other than that, short, I believe he's going to do some time.
Although the judge over the case was very upset over him using the noose, said this thing could have easily blown up into something that could be very damaging. It could have caused race riots in our city. So, that's not something to play with in today's age. So, anyway, let's wrap this up, and we may have to come back and revisit it when the trial starts.
Absolutely.
And then,
ongoing,
and see how it goes. So, I don't like to see anyone go to jail. Nobody was hurt in this particular case. It's a matter of refunding the city. Let's give him back their money. He can write that check and do that. And then, but he needs to show some remorse for what he's done. And he really does need to start apologizing right now before you go to trial. That's my advice to you, Jussie.
Hurry up.
Start apologizing. Give this up. Just say, hey, I was high on, what was Roseanne? Cough syrup and sleeping pills. Coffee. I hadn't slept in a long time. I was taking no-dos. Make up whatever excuse you want to, but start apologizing right now. Just say maybe it came to me in a dream and I thought it was real. But anyway, we'll see. So until next time. So we want to thank all of our subscribers and those who are watching our video.
Absolutely.
If you're not a subscriber, hit the subscribe button and become one, please. That would help us out. And then the other thing, when you see the little bell after you subscribe, if you click on that, anytime new shows come out, you'll be alerted, and so you can catch them before everyone else and get ahead of the curve.
All right. Well, hey, again, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for viewing us, and look forward to seeing you guys soon. We have a new episode coming out pretty regularly, so we thank you very much for your support.
Thank you.